Welcome to the Inspired Father podcast, where we celebrate the extraordinary journey of fatherhood. I'm your host, Wesley Rhoads. Join us as we bring heartfelt, empowering stories from fathers all around the world, the joys and challenges to the triumphs and lessons learned. This podcast is a beacon of inspiration for every dad out there. So let's embark on that adventure of fatherhood together and get inspired. Welcome, everybody, to the Inspired Father podcast. Today, I am here with none other than Ben Schadler. He happens to be my brother-in-law, so I apologize if I go a little bit tough on him for this one. So anyway, Ben, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start off with 30 seconds about you and your family and just kick things off.
Sure. Well, I've been married to Wes's wonderful sister for over 6 years now. We have two beautiful children, Annabeth and Brady. She's 3 and he's 1. And we live in Louisville, Kentucky. I've lived in Kentucky my whole life. I'm an actuary by trade, and we're up here in West Virginia doing a little family retreat this weekend. And I was begged to do the podcast, so here I am trying to give you wonderful people some more content.
Absolutely. Awesome. Appreciate it. Tell us, what is an actuary?
So an actuary evaluates risk. I work in healthcare, so my job is to look at evaluate different types of risks related to aging of the population and be able to kind of give a prediction what that population is going to look like next year to give an idea of how expensive they'll be or won't be based on their medical costs.
Okay, so there's for health insurance, but there are actuaries across all different types of insurance?
Sure. Life insurance, retirement insurance. Before being a healthcare actuary, I evaluated pension plans and calculated to make sure that the companies were putting in enough money so that the plans would be solvent. This can be a big deal. For retirement plans, especially state-funded retirement plans, because these states do not apply to the same laws that private apply to. So we can be like, you need to put in $10 million. And they're like, $300,000 sounds good. Don't worry about
it. The rest will come somehow, some way. Awesome. Well, I'm going to kick this off with, what do you think that your wife would say when asked, why has Ben an inspirational father?
I think that she would say that I'm an inspirational father because I'm there every day. You know, I want to do all the things with my kids. You know, you look at our parents and our grandparents and how they never changed diapers and never did.
Specifically the male.
Yeah. Specifically the males, you know, they didn't change diapers, and you know they had to work all the time and to provide for the family. And while I do work all the time, I am able to work from home, so that's a different dynamic than our parents were allowed to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm there to change a diaper. I'm there to get up in the middle of the night. Don't have to make some of those sacrifices that you do when you have a 35-minute commute and you're gone for 9 hours of the day. And it's been a real blessing. You know, COVID was such a terrible thing, but the one thing that was nice for me is right when my paternity was up and I was getting ready to go back to work, when Annabeth was born, the world kind of shut down. So I was able to, turn that negative into a positive by being able to spend all that additional time with my child that I wouldn't have had otherwise, because I would have never been able to work from home full time, maybe a day a week or something like that when I needed to. But I've only been in the office one day since then. So
that's
all
awesome.
That time
what a blessing.
Spend.
I can imagine that could be difficult at times too. So, but you would say that just being able to be there, be around, be present, helpful, and just not miss out on those different parts and involved in every aspect of your kid's life would be all right. Awesome. I love it. So how old are your children?
They are 3 and 1.
And their genders?
Female and male. If you listen back to the introduction, we've covered all this.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So the
youngest is 18 months ish.
I said 1 month, but
1 month,
1 year,
but 1 year, and then
Annabeth will be 4 in a couple months. So
right.
we're finishing the 3rd year, and we're a little over halfway through the 2nd year with Brady. So
very cool. How was that introducing? She was to the point where she could understand things whenever Brady was born.
Yep.
How was that introducing a new child into the family? Because for us, our kids were born together, and they're also not able to talk or express their feelings that much. Well, they express their feelings. We just don't know exactly what they are. But how was that introducing Annabeth to her new baby brother?
The introduction was great. She's never been jealous of Brady. She, will want attention from mom or dad, but she's always loved her brother and always wanted to spend time with him and be around him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always been really neat to see. She has played with baby dolls her whole life. So we have several friends who have babies, and she's always so interested in the baby and just wants to meet the baby and be around the baby. So that's always been a positive, and something that she's been very nurturing of. The challenge comes in that she wants mommy at this particular time, or Brady's with mommy, so now she wants to be held by mommy because Brady's with mommy.
It's a little bit of a jealousy thing.
It's more of the competition, but never I'm mad at Brady. More of oh, I also want to do this.
Yeah,
and I'm I'm right here, and she's like, I don't want you. I want mommy, of course.
Unless Brady is with you, and then
yes, and then vice versa. But when we first brought Brady home, Lizzie breastfed him, so she was completely responsible for Brady, and it's a small child. And so I did all the baths, bedtime, everything for Annabeth. So she was very attached to me for a couple months.
Oh, wow.
So that was a tough transition to let me go back to work, to let her kind of get into a rhythm of sharing mommy again. And so that was certainly a little bit of a challenge and an interesting point. And, now it's back to normal. She wants mommy to do certain things and she wants daddy to do certain things. We have our roles. And, when I volunteer to do something, it's no. Yeah, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
Or if mommy volunteers to do something, no, daddy does that. So
right. Yeah. So I'm in the fortunate position that I got to know you both before and now that you have children. Was there a big shift that happened? I mean, there is for everybody, but specifically, did you kind of come up with a new mantra or an ethos for your life once you transitioned from not having children to being a father?
I don't know if I would say that there was a mindset shift because I had children later in life. So I was 36 when Annabeth was born. Mm-hmm. So it kind of allows you to close prior phases and prepare for the next phase. My dad was 35 when I was born. So I've had this, example of older parents, and there are pros and cons to that, right?
Yeah.
The negative is my dad is now 75 years old with very small grandchildren. Hopefully we have them for several more years, but there's a big difference in being 75 versus 65.
Yeah.
The trade-off of that is hopefully you're a little more mature, you're a little more set financially, and some of these other decisions can be made a little bit easier. But the one thing that I try to be intentional of is being able to be there for my kids. I know that I turned 40 this year, and that if I want another 50 years, that I have to eat right, I have to do things right, and we do have longevity in my family, similar to you do, especially on the male side. But you still have to, take the steps to make sure that those are good years and not just being here, because I want, I want to be able to walk and move and be able to do stuff. It's a struggle for my dad to get on the floor and play with the kids, whereas my grandfather, when he was 85, could get on the floor.
Right.
It's just a matter of being that mindset. And
you're already being pretty proactive about the, fitness, nutrition, that kind of thing. So we'll dive into that stuff a little bit later. But what do you hope that other fathers can take from our conversation today? It can be things that you would like to make a difference in changing from what you perceive a lot of other fathers are doing, and maybe we could be a little bit better. Or it could just be like a little bit of nugget of inspiration.
I think the biggest takeaway is consistency. Like, we live in a very technology-driven world where you'll see, oh, this father took his kids to Disneyland, or this father, like, created this great trip, and, like, all those moments are special and they're important. Like, I traveled all the time as a kid, like, got to do all kinds of things, but, like, the thing that I remember about my parents is consistency. My dad got his doctorate when I was a kid, and so I remember him, like, dedicating time to go and study and work on his dissertation every night, for years as he did this. And so ultimately, more than a speech, more than seeing the Grand Canyon, more than, any one beach trip, like, that's what I remember is, like, my parents being there for me every day, my parents never missing a game, my parents never missing a practice, my parents always having dinner with me. Like, those are things that stick with you a lot more than you think. And you might think that, oh, well, I'm boring, I'm just doing this. But, like, I think that structure is so important and so imperative. You can always have, one exciting adventure or that one, event that you look back on, and those things are important as well. But if you don't follow through on them and continue to, live your life as an example, then I think a lot of those fall short.
Yeah. And I was talking to another friend of mine, and he said something that kind of goes along that same thought path, is that his kids remembered things that, like, he didn't even remember.
Sure.
But then his advice to me was, like, always kind of show up with your best, because you don't know which of those moments your kids are going to remember. And hopefully it'll be a positive one rather than a negative one, because it is weird. You'll have I can think back on my life and, just weird random memories from not any real significant time. But if, as a father, you're consistent, then the way that you show up, then those memories should be good. Hopefully.
Absolutely.
All right, let's lighten things up just a little bit. Hit us with your best dad joke.
My best dad joke. There's so many that I love, but I guess, did you hear about the guy in the accident? Yeah, he was in a motorcycle accident. Lost his whole left side. Yeah, he's all right now.
Hey, you heard it here first. That is horrible, but great. Love it. Let's talk about some challenges that you've had as a father. Specifically, like, times that you've been vulnerable, maybe discipline. You're kind of getting to the ages now where your kids can understand discipline as far as, like, is what we would think is punishment, or and then you've also got discipline as far as, like, having disciplined children with chores and that type of thing. But let's talk about some challenges that you've had so far as a father, and how you've been able to overcome those with your wife or my sister.
Well, I think the biggest challenge for me so far has been, there is the blessing of working from home is being able to spend all that time. The negative of working from home is spending all that time. And what I mean by that is, like, I feel like you're kind of always on. And so when you spend so much time with them, I think sometimes you can let intentional time slip. And so they'll be playing and I'll just start, like, mindlessly playing on my phone. I'm playing a Sudoku game or just scrolling Twitter or something like that. And while I know it, drives me crazy sometimes, and it drives Lizzie crazy sometimes, it's like, why can't we just put our phones down? We're so attached to technology, but it's not like, oh, get home at 5 o'clock, so put your phone down for 2 hours and then go do it.
You've been home
all day. And so, I'll get a text and I'll respond to it, or I'll do that. And so I think just being more intentional with my time. I think phones are great. Like, I'm not saying, don't do it. I just think, like, trying to be intentional with my time and not getting, like, bored and immediately reaching for my phone. Because, like, I think one of my biggest challenges, and this goes back to the kids now, is, like, being bored isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you an opportunity to think. It gives you an opportunity to explore new things. It gives you an opportunity to create games on your own. So if I'm uncomfortable being bored, how am I going to ask my kids to be comfortable being bored? We're getting ready to go on vacation, so it's going to be 10 hours in the car, and there will certainly be, some screen time, some Coco Melon or, Frozen to pass the time, and that's great.
Those are cartoons for those fathers that don't know.
You think there are people out there who don't know what Coco Melon and Frozen are?
I didn't know until a couple, maybe 2-3 weeks ago.
Do you think there are people who listen to this podcast who don't know what Frozen and Coco Melon are?
I bet you there are, because we got a wide age range of fathers that will hopefully be listening.
But the idea is they need to be able to color and look out the window and think of some other things that are going to pass the time, because we were driving up here this weekend.
I Spy.
The iPads didn't work, and so it wasn't a huge deal. But when they get really fussy, it is a great tool. And I think that would be my other advice: is like everything in moderation is good. There are different tools that you use at different times. It's not that if you ever turn on the TV, you're a bad dad, or if you turn on the TV all the time, you're a bad. You have to do what you need to do to be able to get the day done. And if you need to cook dinner, those kids need nutrition. And if you can't get dinner cooked without giving them something to do, don't feel bad for that. But, also try to get outside and touch grass and ride bikes and jump on trampolines and do other things as well. Everything has its time and place.
So let's dive back a couple sentences to your drive up here.
Yep.
I heard a funny story about that drive when you were playing I Spy, and you said, I spy something silver or gray?
I said silver.
Silver. Got it. All right. Yeah. And what did Annabeth say to that?
Annabeth said, my hair, which is...
specifically Ben's hair here.
Which is interesting because, as Wes can attest to, it's very brown and doesn't have silver in it yet. But she and my wife both thought it was hilarious.
Foreshadowing things to come.
I'm ready for my Clooney years. I will gladly embrace being a silver fox.
There you go.
We're just not quite there
yet. Not quite there.
So.
That's awesome.
She thinks she's funny, though.
So at work, you're very dedicated in what you do for work, and it's taken quite a bit of persistence with that. On that note, is there anything that lessons-wise that you've taken from work that you now apply to being a father?
So to give you guys a little more background, I think part of what Wes is alluding to is to become an actuary, there's an exam process to become certified. So I had to take 6 exams and 8 modules to become an ASA.
And this is like a multi-year process.
Yeah, I've been doing this since 2015, 2 years before marrying Elizabeth, and then 4 years before Annabeth. Wow. So I was speaking earlier about my dad doing his dissertation. Well, one of the things that I didn't want to have to do for an extended period of time is be studying while my kids are little, while they want to play with me. It's definitely a hard balance. Yeah. And so I was able to finish my ASA and become an associate right after Annabeth was born. But the fellowship track is an additional 3 exams and an additional 3 modules, and it's challenging because the prelim, we'll call them prelim exams for ASA, and we'll call them fellowship exams for FSA. Prelim exams are basically math based. So if you're a strong math candidate, we can teach you and you can move on in those quicker.
Right.
The fellowship exams are healthcare law, healthcare healthcare theory. So learning the differences between an HMO versus a PPO versus, just straight fee for service. So these are different techniques that you can use to how you reimburse healthcare providers. And so there's a lot more that goes into that. You actually have to learn it. You can't just be like, okay, this is a derivative. I know how to do a derivative. And so anything that they give me, I can manipulate this formula to ultimately get to my exam. Yeah. So my answer, you have to know, okay, the law says this and this is the law. So, one of the things that I wanted to do was to compartmentalize my time to be able to still move up at work.
Yeah.
And I've gotten promoted twice in that span, while making exam progress, while being intentional with my kids. And so I think, kind of going back to the phone thing, it's all about being able to compartmentalize and put everything in its time and place, but also being flexible. There are days where I was going to study 8 hours a day. I'm going to take a study day from work. I'm going to study, and Annabeth got sick, or Elizabeth got sick.
Yeah.
And so these are things that you have to be flexible on. And if
you once procrastinated, now you can't, because you never know what's coming. It won't allow you to get that work done.
And it's just not the 1950s where, well, I'm the man and I'm doing this, so you guys need to figure it out. I mean, that's just not how I operate. That's not how you operate, and maybe that's not how they operated back then. Maybe these are just the images that, have been passed down.
Sure.
But, I want to be there, and I want to, make things as smooth and effortless. And, my experience is, even if something's uncomfortable in the short term, I really wanted to do this today, or I'm sacrificing this, doing it correctly and getting everything back on path is going to lead to getting things up and running smoothly again a lot faster than being like, well, I'll just study for 4 hours and I'll do this for 4 hours. And then it's like, okay, well, now it's taking 3 days to get over this illness as opposed to 2, because you couldn't be bothered to give them everything they needed, and now your wife is doing more than she needed to do and not getting the rest that she needed, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, makes sense. So would you say there's any particular lesson that you've learned from work, or it could be something as far as time management or any other type of skill, theory, maybe something a boss said once that you're able to apply specifically to fatherhood?
I think that the biggest takeaway from work is surrounding yourself and being in a culture that cultivates your values. So one of the greatest things about my company is my hours are very flexible. Unless there's a specific meeting with someone so high up that we can't move that meeting, I am my boss and be like, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to take the kids to swim class. I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'll be back at 1. I'll hop on tonight and I'll make up some time then if need be. It's very, I'm very much paid for my intellectual capital. It's not so much you need to sit in this chair for 8 hours from 8 a.m. till 4:30 with this half-hour break. Get your work done. Be growing your career. Be doing those things. And so I think, from my standpoint, I think that's really good advice. You're not just going to be able to plan out your day and be like, well, breakfast is at 7. We're going to play from 7:15 till 7:45. We're going to take a walk from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock. We're going to work in the yard for the next 2 hours. I think a rough draft is great, but you have to be flexible, because you never know when things are going to come and go. And also, picking your partner is very important as well when you're, wanting to raise kids together, because they could be the most fun person in the world, but if you can't rely on them, this is for men and women, it's going to be a struggle.
For sure.
And that's one of the things that attracted me to your sister. That's one of the things that attracted me to my company. These things are important, and you might not think about them when you're
dating
18, 19, 21 years old, and it's like, oh, whatever, who cares if you don't align on all your values? I love them and they're so cool and everything. All those things are true.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, the things that really matter to you shift.
Yeah. I agree with that pretty much wholeheartedly. So let's talk about that home life. What are some things that you really enjoy doing with your kiddos that every day you're like, man, I am looking forward to this? Is it cooking breakfast, going for walks, putting them down for bed?
So the first thing that I get to do every morning that I really look forward to is I'm the one who gets Brady out of bed in the morning.
Okay.
Lizzie gets breakfast going for Annabeth. Annabeth usually gets up a little earlier, and I go up there and get Brady out. And Brady likes to be in bed, so I'll go and I'll greet him, and he's happy to see me, and then he'll point to his truck on the floor, and I'll give him that truck, and then I'll point to his truck on the shelf, and I'll give him that truck. and he'll sit there and play for 10 to 20 minutes. And
That's
then
so funny.
he's ready to get out, and so I'll change his diaper, and then he wants to play in the playroom for another
Yeah.
10 or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And his sister is like, come downstairs, let's go downstairs. So that's one of the things I look forward to. Ever since we started dating, like walking has just been a staple in our lives. So we go for a morning walk every day, unless I'm really busy at work and need to get going, or there's weather that's a reason we can't. Every morning we go for a walk. So that's
cool.
something that's really fun.
Yeah.
Being able to work from home, I get to have lunch with them every day,
Yeah.
and that's awesome and something that I really enjoy. And I really enjoy, being able to get off work and go and jump on the trampoline, or helping them ride a bike or push things outside. That stuff is always super fun and super exciting as well. And bedtime, I think just every bit of the routine is fun.
Yeah.
Poopy diapers aren't always the best, but
Definitely not.
everything else, you gotta enjoy every phase. And a toddler tantrum in the moment feels awful, and then you think back on it and you're like, that was like 12 minutes of my day. Like, was it really that bad?
Right, exactly. This is the 5% of my day that just isn't that fun, but then the other,
But, you remember the good and the bad, right? So you don't sit there and remember like, oh, well, I was just, watching Big Bang Theory reruns, That's not what you think about when you think about 5 days ago. But what you do think about are like, oh, my daughter told me like, I'll love you forever and always. And my daughter also threw a fit because her arm went through the wrong hole putting on her shirt. So, I mean, those are things that stand out.
I do the same thing.
We're working on it. We'll get you some things.
Yeah, exactly. I realize my shirt's on backwards. It ruins my day.
Well, that's why you wear so many button-ups. It's very obvious where the front is and where the back is.
You'd be surprised. With all that sleep depression and all that. But
your children are almost 1. Why are you still sleep deprived?
Hey, it is what it is. So going back to work a little bit, with being the provider for your family, have you guys talked about, or do you have ideas on how you're going to impart lessons of finance and like using your talents to serve others, as well as just strictly like rules and lessons around money? Do you have any ideas how you're going to start with those lessons, or how we're going to teach that?
Well, Annabeth has some toys that have broken. And so she, wants to earn money to replace said toys. So one of the things that we've done is, these are 6 chores you can do. Make your bed, tidy up the toy room, feed the dog. Those are examples of little chores that she can do. And as you build those up, every day that you do 3 of those chores, you'll get $1. And when you do it 10 times, we'll replace it. So just kind of an example of delayed gratification, which I think is really good. She's 3. She's not ready, for the for tithing, and you need to save 10% and 30% goes to save, all that. But the idea that
you're never too young for spreadsheets.
I mean, you think I'm the person who enjoys spreadsheets the most in the family.
No, I get it. I get it.
But, I think that's something that's important. Even replacing a loved one. Like, we had a beloved dog that passed away right before Brady was born, when Annabeth was 2.
Yeah.
And we waited over a year to get another dog. We just weren't ready. And I think, part of that is symbolizing, like, when you lose something, you don't just necessarily replace it right away. Things are special and things have value, and you kind of wait for the right time, and you work towards it.
Yeah, that's cool. So with like those chores that you pay for, do you think that at some point, because I know for us there's like chores that we were expected to do, but then there are things that are kind of above and beyond. And it's kind of those above and beyond things that would get rewarded. That's at least how it was in our experience.
So, and that's why I point out those 6 specific, because like one thing that she has to do is bring her, she has to clear her plate every meal. That's not one of the 6, right? Like, these are things that we've added that weren't in her current view of what what consisted of a chore. And so these are probably going to be ones that will eventually go into that view of like these are expectations as opposed to quote unquote chores. But I think you kind of have to introduce them as time goes on. And so as those get easier, you'll add in some different pieces.
So like as the kids age, they'll be able to take on different chores and things like that. But do you think you kind of just gave me an idea there with if you have like a list of things that you can do as extra, but then you only have so much time in a day, right? So the kid's going to realize like, oh, I can only mow the grass so fast or, vacuum the house so quickly. But then they might be like, you could introduce something like, well, if you had this tool, you could actually do it, in twice the time, but that costs money, but then you'll be able to do this chore faster. Do you think that would be something that at some point you could introduce to your kids? Do you think that's a little bit complex?
Probably not. So one of the things that like my family did growing up that was different than you guys is I didn't have a job in high school, but the reason I didn't have a job was I played football, I ran track, like those were my jobs. So like as long as my academics were exceptional, as long as I did something each season, as long as I was visiting my grandparents, being a good friend, being a good brother, and helping around the house, that was considered my job, And so I think when you think of jobs, there are different levels of it. And it's really a commitment to growing yourself. And as a child, you don't necessarily need money, but you do need to grow. And so I think the chores are a way to grow and instill that discipline in one another. So I'm not necessarily trying to teach them like, here's a way to cheat the system, or here's a way to like expedite your efficiency. I'm really trying to teach them like, these are expectations, and these are things that are going to benefit your life. Like if I hadn't played football, for example, I would, my body composition would be different. I would have never started lifting weights. I would look different. There would be pros and cons to that, right? And so by doing that, I sacrificed a lot of time, and I didn't have quote unquote play money like some of my friends did who worked, but I also learned how to deal with people of much different backgrounds than myself. I learned a lot about physical fitness. I was able to build my body and be a good teammate and have fun and play and be a kid. And these are things that
you're developing other skills that later on in life will translate into discipline, just being a social and likable person.
Leadership. I mean, a 14-year-old isn't going to learn leadership working at Kroger. No one's going to take you seriously. It's just not something that you're ready to do because those aren't truly peers. On a football team, those are people who are your age, who are your peers, who can see you and look up. And that's not to say that you can't learn servant leadership at Kroger, for example, but you don't want a 16-year-old managing the produce department unless he's just well advanced. So I think there are different strategies there. But at the same time, working at Kroger, you learn how to work with people who are older than you, right? And so the church I went to growing up was much older demographic. So and I had both sets of grandparents living by. So I did get to spend a lot of time with older people and my parents' friends and this sort of thing. So I got that connection in a different way. But all these paths, I don't think there's any right or wrong path. They're just pros and cons to it. But I do think that there's something to be said for taking advantage of opportunities that are finite. And so being on a bike team, playing football, doing ballet, these are things that you aren't necessarily going to get the opportunity to do as you get older, or if you do it, it becomes infinitely more expensive to play football as a 30-year-old or to continue dance. So I mean, I think understanding that and taking advantage of those opportunities are things that are definitely powerful. Like when I have dreams, I'm serving tables at Steak and Shake, and I'm on the football team. And those are things that I haven't done in years and years and years and years. But those are areas where I was under extreme circumstances, right? Both positive and negative. Highest of highs, lowest of lows. And so I think those are part of the reasons that they stick with you and kind of define who I am and are experiences that really impact that outside of the home. And so I think it's good to be able to, promote some of those experiences that are going to challenge and reward you for better or worse.
I like that. More intrinsically versus, financially or that type of thing. Let's talk about some proud moments that you've had. It can be as a husband or as a father. But if you could think of, and then if you want to identify one for like maybe each children, then as a husband,
Sure.
that'd be cool too.
I mean, I think since becoming a father, I really, I think I'm going to turn it around. So this is called the Inspirational Father Podcast, right? Inspired Father. I don't view myself as the inspiration. I view the kids as the inspiration. So I don't wake up and I'm like, how can I inspire? Like, how can I be this leader? Kind of like a teacher would, like when you go to school. Like, they just inspire me. So like when, the first time you go in their room and it's like, they don't wake up crying and they just wake up happy to see you. Like when Annabeth wakes up happy to see me, it's like, oh my gosh, like it just melts your heart and it makes you proud. And it's like, I feel proud about that because one of the things that I'm trying to do is like teach her how to feel her emotions. Yeah. And so like as she becomes more emotionally balanced, maybe balance isn't the right word, maybe emotionally intelligent. Yeah. I think like that for me is like a big win, and just seeing like, okay, like I have feelings, but by being intentional and like letting her know like feelings are good, like I'm a more stoic person in a lot of ways, but like one thing that I had to learn is like being stoic to me is like not freaking out in the situation. It's not means that you don't have feelings. It doesn't mean that you don't talk about the feelings afterwards. To me, it just means like, oh, everything's going crazy around you. I don't want to add to that drama. I need to compartmentalize my feelings, and afterwards we can talk about like, hey, this is how I felt right here. I was terrified. These are things that we don't want to have happen again, but I don't want to like add that stress to the people who are already going through a stressful scenario. So I want Annabeth to understand her emotions. I just don't want her to be a prisoner to her emotions. And so like for me, I think for Lizzie as well, like seeing her control, you can tell that the emotion's going over her, and like to see her process it and to see her let it pass or redirect it in another direction on herself, like is a very pride inducing moment. Like, okay, like we're teaching her to not just be a slave to the emotion, not to be a slave to the moment, and to kind of go through and process that. Yeah. So I think for me, that's an example of a proud moment. Seeing your kids walk for the first time. I mean, it's awesome. Seeing them sit up, like every little step, milestone. And the first time you see them, just seeing them love on each other. Like I love it when I come upstairs and I catch a glimpse and they don't know that I'm there, and I can just see like them cuddling with my wife on the couch, or coloring, or she's teaching them. Like she's such an amazing teacher. She was a teacher before she started, before we had kids, and she stayed home, and just continuing to see those skills like be developed and be moved, are awesome. And
that's cool. So this is a perfect segue for as a husband, right? I've already experienced a lot of challenges since becoming a father, and then also, maintaining my status as a husband. It can be very challenging. There's definitely lots of highs and lows, and then learning, before you were kind of going through life together, and you definitely loved each other, but you didn't necessarily have like a common goal, which are your children. What challenges have you faced, highs, lows, and then give us some advice for like how to maintain in your mind being a good husband, or surrounding becoming a father as well?
Well, I think it's important to realize that we as the husbands are the assistant to the manager. You know, like we have some authority. We have authority over the kids. You know, they're the employees, but like our wives are way more hands-on. So they are, you know, to use the finance terms again, they are the manager. You know, so I want to make sure that like I understand what she's trying to accomplish that day, and like if you don't want to allow the kids to play you guys against each other. So you come upstairs, hey, Daddy, can I have a snack? Oh, sure, you can have a snack. I'm like, wait, why are you asking me? Mommy's right there. What's going on? Why do we not have a snack? So I think, you know, we've all, you know, like Lizzie and I have been building towards something since we, you know, started dating, because like I was working at a bank at the time. I decided that I didn't want to become a loan officer. So I needed to completely change careers. So like I took a leave of absence. I was living off credit cards and studying to, you know, try to move towards doing something better with my life, like becoming an actuary. And so like we've been kind of building in that direction with like a common purpose our whole lives. You know, whereas like when you and Chastity met, like she was already a nurse. You guys already had a much more set path for like, okay, this is what we want to do. You've since had a journey more similar to mine where you're like, okay, I'm going to change. But when you first started dating, you were very successful selling cars. She was a very successful nurse. Like your financial situation was very different than like Lizzie and I, where she stopped working with the horses, went back to school. I started studying. Like, you know, we went from having nothing to like building this life together. And so I think one of the things that we are very intentional with is like, okay, like I like to sit here and be like, oh, what do the next 5 years look like? She hates that conversation, but she'll do a similar thing, but she'll be like, okay, like this fall, like what do we want, you know, what activities are we going to do? What ballet are we going to do? And so I think one is just like a little more macro than she's ready to talk about right now. One's, you know, a little more on the micro level, but like they're a similar thing. Like what are our long-term goals? Like what do we want to, you know, see from this? And like when a situation comes up, we're going to research it. Like we'll read books, we'll do podcasts, we'll, you know, do courses to try to figure out like with Annabeth's emotions, with sleeping, with all these different things, like how can we get on the same page? And I never have as much energy for it as she does, because she's just amazing. But like if she is like, this is where we need to put our energy, then that's where my energy needs to go as well.
Right. Makes sense. And then what about like, you know, date night, that kind of thing? You guys being pretty intentional about all that?
We could be better about that, but we do try to get out.
Good time for each other.
Good time. Like this year we've been a lot more intentional on like taking some trips. So like we went away for a concert. We went down to Asheville for like a long weekend.
That's cool.
So we've been much better about like the bigger trips. We should probably be a little better about like, hey, let's go have dinner, let's go have a walk. But we don't have much family that lives near us, so that is a little more of a challenge. But I'd say we'd like to do that every month. We're probably closer to like every 6 weeks with that right now. But we'll sit down and watch a show together or do things like that. But man,
how do you think your kids view your relationship? I mean, obviously they're pretty young still, but how do you think they view it now, and how do you want them to view it going forward? Like specifically between you and your wife.
I hope going forward that they always, you know, see the love and appreciation we have and the respect we have for one another. I think, you know, right now they definitely see that, and, you know, they see me kiss their mother every day. They see us, you know, touch and hug, and, you know, like I hug and kiss both my children. I don't care that Brady's a boy. Like if I'm going to kiss Annabeth, like I'm going to give Brady a kiss, you know? And like, these are things that like, I don't think I don't ever remember my dad kissing me. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm going to kiss Brady when he's 10 years old. I don't know, but like at the same time, like I don't want them to, you know, not feel loved, not feel hugged, not feel appreciated. So.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's an interesting point that I hadn't thought of. I want to, you know, think about that. I mean, just with the boy-girl dynamic.
Be more Italian, right? I mean, like
exactly. Be more Italian. Both of our kids have somewhat Italian names. So, have you made any like big mistakes thus far as a parent?
Oh Lord, I hope not.
Or things that you like.
I think there are
that
things
you
that we would do
can-
differently.
Right.
Annabeth really struggled to sleep for the first 4 months, and we didn't really use our resources. We didn't ask about like different sleep training options and that sort of thing. And I went back to work, and I was messaging him, buddy. I'm like, yeah, like she just won't sleep. And he's like, taking care of babies, man, it'll change your life. And so we did that, and she's been great ever since. So
And
I
that's
think
Kara, like somebody's name, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Taking
So that's a
care
good
of babies
resource for
if
guys
you're struggling
listening.
to sleep.
Yeah, if sleep is an issue. Let's talk about your dad for a second.
Sure.
What are some really big lessons that you've learned from your father?
I mean, I think from my dad, there are so many lessons, some, that came out of really positive situations, some that came out of really negative situations. So my mom, when I was 13 years old, got diagnosed with cancer, and she died when I was 20. And, seeing how committed he was to her, how, everything that he could do going through, this terrible time for himself without being able to, really discuss what was going on. Because part of the, I gave my definition of stoicism earlier. Part of the reason I feel that way is my mom was incredibly stoic, like everything internalized, white knuckle, everything. Like, you don't need help from anyone. The only person she would talk to any of this stuff about was my dad. I never had any idea how sick she was, how much everything was going through. And I just feel like that was such a mistake on her part. There were so many people who loved her and who are also left to deal with these emotions that, they weren't prepared to deal with, because we never had any idea like how sick she was at the time. But to see, even though my dad disagreed with the decision, how much he supported her and, and honored her wishes and, continued to, just keep all this internalized, was incredibly powerful, and, just a testament to the type of man he is and how, strong their relationship was and how much respect they had for one another. He had an incredibly challenging job. He was an assistant principal and then a principal when I was a kid, and there's going to be a lot of long days, basketball games, soccer games, wrestling matches that you've got to go to. And, with the discipline and things that are going on in the school, they can be really hard days as well. And so there were days where he came home and would have a hard day and, need that time to himself to kind of, he never wanted to take it out on us or, unleash frustrations on us, but like he would need to separate himself because like, a kid brought a gun to school that day or, something really, bad or frustrating happened and you have to kind of compartmentalize and go back to being a dad. And so,
plus, dealing with his wife, just having to, unpack those emotions and stuff, especially since it sounds like she wanted to kind of keep that private.
For sure, but like he was always very intentional, like with his time when, whenever he had time away from work, like we would go to Florida twice a year, we would always go visit my grandparents. We would go to basketball games, football games, like when he had time to spend time with us, like that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's what he did, was spend time with us. So I think he was very good at compartmentalizing and like time management and balancing all the time.
Do you feel like that as an assistant principal and a principal that you ever were compared to the kids that he was kind of the leader of the school?
No. So,
or he was like, okay, we definitely don't want to go down this path because I've seen what that does for little Johnny and it didn't turn out so good.
I graduated 6th of a class of 270, from the time I was in 4th grade on. I was in accelerated classes. I never got in trouble. That was never an issue. So it was never, I don't want to use the word average kid because I think in so many ways I am average, but as far as behavior and academic performance, I was never average. So I don't think I was ever compared to it positively or negatively because I could always perform or outperform everyone in those instances. So, it's not like, oh, well, Johnny, Johnny's getting A plus.
Yeah, exactly.
I got 107 in my math class. Like I was fine, so I don't think that was ever.
They don't have a grade high enough for me.
Now, athletically, that might be a little bit different. Like, maybe if you would put down the second Genesis, you would, play it as a junior instead of having to wait until you were a senior to get more playing time. But
Yeah. What does that mean? The second Genesis.
It's just a old video game system.
Oh, okay. Got it. What are some, you talked about like traveling to Florida. What are some happy or proud moments that come right to the top of your head about your dad?
Oh, I mean, there are some unbelievable moments. He was retired after he retired, he was admitted into the Kentucky Athletic Hall of Fame as a coach and a player. So getting to go to Rupp Arena and like watch him be like honored on the court.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. Being able to kind of like see and experience that.
That is cool.
He always wanted to take us to travel. So I remember him like picking me up and putting me on his shoulders at the Grand Canyon and being able to like look out and see all that and just all those different times spent together.
That's awesome. And then I know your dad is a very inspirational person for you, but are there any other people that you really subscribe to or that you consider mentors or leaders?
Oh, absolutely. But my mom's dad, my Papa Henry, was definitely like the person that I considered like my best friend growing up.
Okay.
And just being able to learn from him and see from him. He was an engineer and came from nothing in Breathitt County, Kentucky, moved away from everything up to Cincinnati to go to school and start changing his life and changing the course of his family's life. That sacrifice to
where did he move to?
He settled in northern
Cincinnati.
Kentucky, but like he moved up to Cincinnati to do all that.
As an engineer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he was a school teacher when he was down in Breathitt County.
Yeah.
He moved up here to go to school and do all that and would work nights and taught at night to be able to pay for it.
What kind of engineer?
Aviation.
No, sweet. I didn't know that either.
Yep.
That's cool. Who did he work for in Cincinnati?
GE.
Okay. They build, big engines and things.
A little bit.
Nice. What are you currently grateful for?
Just grateful every day for my wife and kids and family and my relationship with God and just being healthy and active and being able to be here and experience everything that I'm able to experience.
And when I say the word legacy, what does that mean to you?
Brady and Annabeth.
Yeah. And then what do you hope as far as values that you can instill in them that they're able to act out as well as transfer to their kids and other people?
I mean, I just hope that they're always compassionate people, that they always care about people. And like, I say it all the time, like you've talked about finance a lot, but like, it's just money. We'll make more of it. You can't make more time. You can't make more memories. Like I'm 40 years old. My mom passed away at 51. Like that's something that I think about a lot. You know, like if I only have 11 years left, like what do I need to do in those 11 years?
Right.
So that when I leave, like, everything is okay, and so am I willing to sacrifice more time away from my kids to maybe get that promotion a little faster? Am I willing to sacrifice, time to, achieve different goals? And so I think it's just a matter of kind of putting that balance in a perspective. And I want my kids to know that like career is important. I also want my kids to know that like career is not the most important thing. I've had 3 careers in the last 11 years. I don't think any of them were wrong. I think I could have had a great life pursuing any of them. But as your values change, as your priorities change, I think it's important to evaluate and see what you need to do and want to do. When my kids are in school and I have more time, I might do something different that might be more financially rewarding and also more time consuming because I have more time. Right now, that's not what I want to do, and that's not to say that my job's not time consuming and not any of those things. But I left when I left retirement, one of the reasons I left was I was working 60, 70-hour weeks.
At the bank, correct?
No, as an actuary, but doing retirement.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And I didn't want to continue down that path, knowing that, my growth was incremental. And by incremental, I mean, small growth each year.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, the financial reward was way higher leaving, as well as, the career opportunities.
Yeah.
But
also unlocked a lot of time.
There is a feeling of importance when you're doing that, because, people are like, oh, you're so great. People aren't willing to do this. You're one of the few people who can do this. And that does give you a sense of like pride and accomplishment. But it's also like, I'm doing all this to make everyone else, their lives easier, to make them more money, and I'm not getting that reward. Like, there's no way that I'm going to continue to do this for this at this rate.
That makes sense. Something that you said kind of triggered a thought for me, and the thought was just wanting to be able to identify strengths and talents in our kids, so that I can help them leverage those as they grow, right? So instead of pushing on areas that they may not be the strongest at, like really fostering those areas of life that they're talented at, so that they can grow and they can leverage those going forward into the future. It sounds like you were really talented as a kid with mathematics, and then you found this career that really is in line with that. And that's really cool that you were able to do that. But I feel like a lot of people and fathers are a little bit lost, and they don't really know what they're good at. And then I hope that as a father, I'm able to help my children identify that and exploit those talents.
So that's not 100% accurate. I was really strong in math, but I was really strong in everything. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to actually go into journalism, and I wanted to write. I was a published author in high school. Like, I loved writing. It, was a passion. And my dad really steered me away from that, because he's like, there's no money in that. I don't, you should focus on math because you're also great in math. But like, if you looked at it, if you rate your skills academically on like a 0 to 10 scale, like I was above 8 in everything, but like science was probably my lowest at an 8, 8.5. But like English, history, math were all closer to 10s, right? So I didn't really want to do engineering as much, because I knew it was a lot more physics. I really had a bad physics teacher in high school, and I did not enjoy physics. And at the time, I didn't know how to independently study. Like, now I could go back, if I knew what I knew now, I could go back to college and I could be a brain surgeon if it wasn't for my fear of blood. But at the time, I didn't know how to independently study, so I was very reliant on like my teachers, like needing good teachers to kind of like steer me in the right direction, so that I could, learn what I need to learn to accelerate at the test. So I appreciate my dad for kind of steering me in that direction, but like, it was also at a very turbulent time in my life, because like I'm transitioning from high school to college. My mom was very sick. She would pass away 2 years later. And so I think I think it's very good to recognize your kids' strengths. I think it's very good to, try to give them the advice, but ultimately it is their life as well. And while you need to nurture their strengths, I think you also need to accept their choices. And if, basically my parents are paying for college, we're not going to pay for it. If you do journalism, we're going to, we want you to do something math-based. Okay, I understood that. As an 18-year-old, I was like, okay, I understand that. And like, if mom hadn't died, I would have graduated in 4 years and it would have been no issue. But when she died, like, I got sleep depression. I was depressed. I had to take a break. I had to reset. I had to get healthy. I had to take care of my mental health. I just could not study and perform and do that to the level that I needed to do. And, that goes back to, I think you need to share, and you might not need to tell your kids like every little thing. I was also 20 years old. I'm not a 5-year-old. You need to be able to understand what they can and can't handle, so that if something bad happens that is going to happen, they can hopefully have a little easier time dealing with
Yeah.
it. Even if it might be a little harder on you as a parent, having to share and open that up and, change their view of you of being unbreakable or invincible or whatever. I think, it's important to grow your relationship with your kids as they progress too, because you'll always be their father, but as you get older, you will be more of a friend, you will be more as a mentor, there will be these different hats. Right now we are the authority, and we have to make sure that they are becoming good people. As they become good people, I think it's okay to share other sides of yourself as well.
It sounds like you're going to take it very seriously, teaching that emotional intelligence, because you've already said some stuff that leads me to believe that with Annabeth especially, because she's already at that age where those emotions get tough.
Yep.
As well as teaching your kids how to learn and self-study. Is that also an area that you'll spend?
Yeah. Because I think it's definitely...
Sounds like if you had that skill earlier, that you may have been on a very different path than the one you're on.
Well, and that's where we go back to the technology, right?
Yeah.
Like with the internet, you can now go down and learn all this stuff.
Right.
When I was a kid, it would take as long to connect to the internet as you could actually be on the internet. So there are pros and cons with that, but you do a lot of self-study, right? And you're not in a classroom to do that self-study. There are so many great resources.
Probably just like you, everything in mine, besides being out of the aircraft itself, has been at home. Or
I'm not super interested in how a car engine works. I just want it to work. If I want to learn how a car engine works, I could probably be pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm willing to buy a car and dive into it, you know. And so I think that is a benefit, but hopefully, and we talk a lot about education, how it's changed in the negative. I do think one of the ways that it's changed in the positive is they try to expose these kids to different options, and you can kind of see different things, and it's not just so black and white. It's like, all right, go pick a project. It's like, well, what do you mean pick a project? Like, we've been reading this textbook, and there are 5 things in it. Like, do you want me to make a light bulb out of a potato, or do you want me to try to show erosion with rocks? Like, those are the 2 options. Those are the only 2 things I know about. So and you were kind of reliant on if your parents had more ideas, or that's it.
Interesting. So this is a fun part of we're kind of wrapping up here, is the Father's Challenge. All right, so I'm trying to do one of these a month, so this is a time where you get to challenge our other listeners, and then it can be in a lot of different ways. It can be physically, with nutrition, it can be with social, or relationship wise, or as a father. Literally any challenge that you can think of. You can give our listeners, and they've got to subscribe to that challenge until the next one.
2 hours straight. Put your phone down for 2 hours.
2 hours straight.
Put it away. Put it on the charger.
Is that per month?
Per day. Do it partially during dinner. I think having dinner with your kids is super important. Having them see you have the patience to sit down. I don't eat meals in front of TVs.
Yeah.
I don't do that. So take the time and put it away. I struggle with it as well.
Yeah.
Football season's getting ready to start.
Uh-oh.
I'm checking scores and things like that. But I promise you, what I tell myself is true. It'll wait. You'll come back, and you might have even more interesting things to read and catch up on. But they're worth it.
Straight.
They're worth it, and you won't have any regrets about it. You might become a better. You might build better barns and construct better trains with the kids.
No, that's awesome. So. Yeah, and then to clarify, that cannot be during sleeping hours, because you shouldn't have your phones during that time.
Correct.
So 2 hours straight, that's going to be tough.
2 hours of active time with the kids.
I like that. And then is there any way that we can kind of serve you? Is there anything that you're struggling with that you need help? Or the technology?
Just the break, and giving them more of my undivided attention, and just doing something that maybe you don't want to do. I don't love seen on concrete, so I don't necessarily want to get down and like draw chalk drawings with them. But
So buy you some knee pads.
Yeah, gain a towel, like doing something that maybe you might not think it's not a big deal, but might mean the world to them.
And then, is there a metric that you can kind of grade yourself by as your success as a father?
At this point, just that they're growing and that they're healthy. You know, as you move forward, you want to see how they interact with others.
Yeah.
I'm not saying academic and athletic and financial success isn't important, but like how do they treat others? Like, I won the citizenship award in elementary school, and like of all the awards that I won, that's probably the one that I'm the most proud of, because like of all the kids in the elementary school, like they were like, the way that he treats the lunch ladies, the way that he treats the teachers, the way that he treats the janitors, like he is by far the most model student when it comes to that. And so just being able to like interact with all people with respect, and like your mom and your sister both hand me the phone when they're dealing with like telemarketers and stuff like that, because they're like, you're just so good at dealing with those people. Like it's a soft skill, but like it is a skill. And like I think one of my strengths as a person is like being able to see how other people view things. And so I don't just see it from my perspective. I'm like, I can see it from their perspective. I'm like, well, they don't really understand what's going on and all that.
So you guys need a timeshare. Ben's got a couple he needs to sell, right? I'm joking. Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, we will continue to pray and send you some maybe tips, advice on how to be more intentional and put the technology down.
Cool.
And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. I'll go to YouTube to like learn something, and then I'll be like, go for that thing, watch that thing, and then like an hour later I'm like, whoa, where did that hour go? So is there a way that you would prefer us get in touch with you if somebody's heard something here that they like and would like to pick your brain on something, or if they've got a piece of advice or a tip to help you with showing up being more intentional?
You can shoot me an email.
All right, cool. We'll link that down in the show notes. Well, awesome, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I definitely got some inspired bits from this. So thank you. Oh, and I almost forgot. At the very beginning, we talked about what do you think that your wife would say when asked why has Ben an inspirational father. So we'll go ahead and read that note now. Why has Ben an inspiring father? When I was asked to answer this question, it felt daunting to try to sum up the ways that Ben is an inspiring father. I need a book just to scratch the surface of how amazing he is, but I'll do my best to keep it shorter than that. Ben is the kind of man that I want my daughter to look for someday in a husband, and the kind of man I want my son to be. Ben, first off, is an incredible husband. He makes me feel loved every day and shows our kids what it means to love someone. He is kind, loving, attentive, patient, and is exceptionally empathetic. He loves God and wants to show our kids how much God loves them. What a gift it is to be married to him, and what a blessing he is to our children. Ben nurtures his relationship with both of our kids. He doesn't have loads of extra time after work, but he invests the time he does have in being a present father. That means he's focused on the kids when he does get time with them. That looks like jumping on the trampoline, chasing our oldest on her bike, reading the 20th story about trucks to our youngest, and sometimes just snuggling on the couch. He is ready just to play with them, and they love their daddy so much. He just wants to be with them and makes them a priority. Ben is also ready to learn and improve as a father. He's taken a lot from his childhood, but we also took an online course and have read through several books, piecing together what we want our parenting to look like. It is really important to both of us that we are on the same page when we are parenting. And lastly, Ben is the rock of our family. We all look to him for guidance and support. He follows through with what he says he will do, so we always trust him. He is calm when it is stressful and doesn't jump to conclusions. I am thankful that our children will grow up having such an inspirational father. Their lives will be forever blessed by him.
Inspired Fathers. My name is Wesley Rhoads, and you've been listening to the Inspired Father podcast. I hope you found inspiration from this episode, and also hope that you'll subscribe and join us next time on the Inspired Father podcast.